Welcome back, everybody. I am Jeff with Flying Chimp. For another episode of ChimpChat, we are joined today by Jonathan Keith of Team JK, a 25-person real estate team with Compass Realty. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me, buddy. Excited to be here in pandemic times.
So let's get right to pandemic times. I'm sure that COVID-19 and coronaviruses have absolutely no impact on the real estate market whatsoever. So really, this is going to be a really quick conversation. Or maybe it has some impact. Why don't you talk about the impact it's actually had?
Yeah, of course. I think that everybody's impacted. There was no way around this. It seems like the bike shops are doing great, but as far as real estate, it's definitely a change of game. I think right off the bat, we're all concerned about how the mortgage industry is going to play out. We're seeing, obviously the guidelines and the constraints are going to be there for getting a loan, and how that's going to play out, Jeff. It's playing out as it stands, but we're hoping it's going to, open back up, so it'll be easier for those who have affordability towards get a loan. And basically, what's happening right now is the mortgage companies are concerned about layoffs.
Sure.
So just to kind of get a little deep right off the bat, that's probably the nuance of where we're at. As far as agents are concerned, I think that everybody's ready to get back to work and get back to some sort of variation of a norm outside of the stay at home. And obviously that just got extended a little further down the road. So definitely some challenges there. As far as showings, I have a showing tomorrow at a vacant home.
Okay.
$2.5 million property, and it seems like the buyers were bike riding around, believe it or not, and found the property over in the eastern Fort Lauderdale section, right on the water. And they're like, Jonathan, get us in, find out if there's anybody living there. It doesn't seem like it. And if not, we'll come in with gloves and mask and see what we need to see to make a decision on whether we're interested or not. So that was probably a half hour ago. We just listed a property over in Harbor Beach. We had immediate activity, and as it stands, the people are like, hey, listen, we don't even need to come down and see the home. We've seen all the pictures, we've seen the virtual tour, and we've seen enough. All we need to know is the defining lines with the association and the restrictions that they have. And then we'll make a decision based upon that, and potentially tear the property down anyways.
Wow, that's amazing. So let's get back to the initial thing you said about the mortgages. Obviously, rates are incredibly low, but you're saying that the concerns that the mortgage, that the banks and the mortgage brokers and the mortgage banks have is they're kind of restricting those funds, even though the rates are so low, because they're concerned with layoffs and whether people are going to have the funds in order to pay for it. Talk to me about what you're seeing and that kind of balance in that regard, and how that's going to impact sort of the mid-level homes. I assume the highest level homes is kind of less of a concern, but on the mid-level homes, that sort of that maybe the condo market through maybe 750 or so. I'm assuming that's where the biggest impact is going to have. Is that what you're seeing?
Well, it's an interesting scenario, because obviously I think the mid level is actually where the mortgages are going to apply to, where monies is going to be concerned on the amount of money's down, and that's going to be where the challenge is with affordability. I think that you're going to see, with affordability comes the issue of mobility. So once we're able to mobile out of this, once we actually become mobile and we're able to really start digging into what we have of what the pandemic has finalized and where we push forward, the effects of what the pandemic will definitely define where we're pushing.
Jonathan, can you hang on? I'm going to pause the recording for just a moment. And sorry for that interruption. Why don't you go back and talk about the affordability component of what you were saying?
Yeah, so with affordability is going to come into place with, obviously people are going to want to take advantage of the low rates, but then we define, and once we get beyond our mobility, because mobility is going to be in check, and then affordability is going to come into play with jobs, and who's able to have a job, who's able to, get definition and defined approval that they are still working in the middle of in the middle and at close of their mortgage process.
Gotcha. So what is the general thinking about when that's going to start to feel like they're going to start like when they're going to start loosening the reins on those funds? Is there any guesses? Have you what are the people in your mortgage world
Yeah, that's
saying about
interesting.
that?
It's interesting how it plays out, and I'm kind of veering right back towards, the government on, what they laid out with that $2 trillion, which has pretty much been exhausted already. So in between that issue and then and that's going to make the impact on, mortgages. It's going to be a very awkward world as we get out. And I'm sure things will start to band back together. But things that'll play a part in is the financial assistance and the loans in place with that. We've got IRS deadline extensions that came up, so we've got 90 days as of the 15th of April. Some other things that we were working on or that we've seen come out were the task force, and that's something I want to mention. The state of Florida put in a reset task force, which is set up for the real estate to restore economic strength through employment and tourism. So there is an actual platform that the state of Florida is working on called Reset. Again, that's restore economic strength through employment and tourism. So that's going to come into place and going to really make an impact on what COVID-19 left us as we push forward.
So what are you seeing from your buyer's perspective? Now, to kind of pivot a bit, right? Because I think a lot of people, at least from the business sales community, the business brokers and the investment banks, a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines now concerned about valuations, right? What are you seeing from a buyer's perspective or a seller's perspective with regard to what they anticipate valuations being kind of when things get back to normal? Is time going to be an impact there?
Based upon the fact that I've been in the biz for 20 years and we've seen a few different dips and valuation's definitely going to become a concern in my opinion, because you're going to have potential short sales and foreclosures that are going to come up. Is it doom and gloom? I'm not seeing that. Maybe for some families where they just don't have another place to turn and they need to find a different market to find another job or employment. But that's going to affect the valuation of how fast they need to get out of here to be able to survive, and what they end up selling the home for, what the bank allows them to sell the home for if they're upside down. So yeah, we kind of go back to, we step outside of a pandemic scenario. We go back to the mortgage crisis of 2007, 8, 9. I was right in the middle of that. And we did, a substantial amount of short sales and foreclosures. And we're already starting to create those relationships again with the banks to become their asset managers.
Sure. So we obviously you said 7, 8, and 9. You did a lot of short sales and foreclosures and those sorts of sales, which obviously things were worth half, a little bit higher, maybe 60% of what the valuation is today. Are there any guesses to what the valuations might be in 6 months, or we don't really have?
Yeah, that is definitely the $64,000 question. The old school concern there. Yeah. I'd hate to put a number on that because we don't know how much deeper, and there could be a thread to this as well. They're saying there's another band of COVID out there that could reignite, and who knows how that's going to play. So I think it's going to be, I think that, as a community and as people in general, depending on how we react to this coming out of it, is going to make the impact. That'll truly, just as much as how they, people in the public make a difference in valuation by the supply and demand. And we've been in demand position all the way up until COVID. It's been a seller's market, and buyers have been saying, hey, we're okay with that. Now, what that dynamic going to be, what it's going to be like from this point forward, there's a lot of nuances that are going to take place. You're going to have people that were in condos that felt like, wow, that was very dangerous. I didn't like being in a multifamily environment with COVID in place. I didn't like the fact that the association didn't allow my friends to come see me or my family to come see me because of a full lockdown for the building. Or I didn't like the fact that somebody had COVID in the building and we were either told or not told that there was somebody there that did have COVID, and however far that went, how long it, what happened there? Did it get spread, or did it become a spreading issue? So that in itself is a nuance. We have a lot of Northeastern second home buyers or owners that are in place where, what was that like for them? Did they not like that they were stuck in New York and couldn't come down to their unit because they ended up getting locked out? So that just didn't benefit them. And maybe they were going to want to unload, or maybe they felt up in Northeast that they wanted to come down here so bad that once they get out of their lockdown, it's going to be open game for them to just come down and become, make Florida their primary residence. So that's going to be another nuance. I think the key factor behind all this, unfortunately, on a humanitarian perspective, and I've been saying this over and over again, is, business is business. But, ultimately, Jeff, we have definitely got to give our love and shouts out to, the men and women on the front lines that are taking care of. I think that's a whole new perspective of life and our world in general, is our healthcare professionals and the firefighters, the nurses, the police officers. Team JK has, a police officer on the team. He puts his life out on the line every day. And it's definitely, he's been concerned, we've been concerned for him. Along with Team JK has, there's a nurse on our team as well that has put her family in jeopardy for her to serve, our community and take care of those that aren't doing so well. So that first is the priority, and then our business is secondary, in my opinion. And I think that the world just saw the truth of that by shutting everything down and saying, hey, nothing else matters, Jeff, other than health first.
Right.
Which was, to be honest, that was good to see. Because what if everybody said, hey, listen, no, we can't, we're not going to shut the government down. We're not going to shut things down. And, we don't, whatever needs to happen has to happen, and people are going to get sick, and people are going to die. And how would that work out for everybody?
Well, unfortunately, that's still that last part still remains to be seen, because there is another side to people arguing another point there.
It looks like there's some riots out there. I just saw in the news.
But it is unfortunate that it takes a tragedy to make us recognize the difficulties and the importance of certain positions that we have in society. I mean, certainly 9/11, reminded us of the importance of the firefighters that are out there.
Yeah.
And this is sort of reminding us of the importance of healthcare. And I'm going to even argue teachers, in the sense that, parents who are sort of trying to do all these multiple hats at home as educator as well, while getting the support of their teachers, it's not the same. And they're realizing this is really hard. This isn't easy. And you have to deal with 20 of these things every single day, kind of thing. So it really is kind of fascinating how it is making people think. But the reality of it is that business is business, and the economy, we live in an economy that is predicated on on money flow, on deal flow, on the movement of money in some capacity is what creates the economy that we live in. So it's every bit, I'm not going to say as important, it's certainly not as other parts of it, but it's what people are thinking of, because once we've kind of accepted this is where we're at from a world perspective, this is the new normal for at least the short term, and I don't think it'll ever go back entirely to whatever it was 3 months ago. I think the interesting part is going to be how we kind of move back into the semblance of what we kind of wanted it to be in the past, or what it had been in the past. And that's why the conversations like these are interesting to people, because if you have people that were sitting on the sideline and they said, hey, you know what, we've been renting, we were thinking about upgrading, we were thinking about downgrading, this is going to potentially impact, and
Yeah.
some of your advice and some of what you're saying, the experience that you're sharing, is going to impact things. For example, and I'm not trying to speak for anybody besides myself, if I was looking at buying a home 3 months ago and we just started the process, I'd be sitting on the sidelines for 6 months just seeing what's happening.
Yeah, it's totally understandable.
I want to see, like, hey, like, buying in 2009 a home is a whole lot better than buying it in 2019. You get the same home. I mean, for dollar comparatively.
Right. And what's interesting is that sometimes we cross paths with buyers who just say, well, I just want the best deal, but the best deal might not be the perfect home for them. So sometimes getting the best deal doesn't align with the perfect home. So typically what I always suggest, find that perfect home that just meets the family criteria, and then work out the numbers backwards, in my opinion, because once you're in that home and it's not meeting the criteria that you actually thought we've seen people purchase properties where they got the best deal, and then they ended up selling it later on down the road, whether they did or didn't make money. Most of them did make money, but they weren't happy. And I always say, listen, happiness comes with a cost, so pay for it. And whether that your best home is going to come up during or after a pandemic or a crisis, that remains to be seen. Can you make an amazing deal a perfect home for you? What's going here?
We just lost you for a moment. We just lost you for a moment. You said, can we make a great deal, a perfect home? Please continue.
Yeah, we've seen it, but we have seen where people have bought, the best deal, and it wasn't the perfect scenario. They were more focused on a deal than what actually met their criteria. So I would definitely be cautious about that. And going back to your comments on reset and restart, and as I was reading what the state of Florida is doing, and what Florida Realtors is doing. Florida Realtors has joined forces with associations from across Florida on a task force to restore economic strength through employment and tourism. That's called Reset, right? The task force will focus on policy recommendations and initiatives that will seek to help all Florida's economies rebound from the effects of COVID-19. In addition to focusing on ways that Florida can restart and rebound the economy, the task force, the Reset Task Force, will provide recommendations and suggestions for resiliency for the impacted industries in the event of another pandemic or event that shutters the economy similar to COVID-19. So what I'm saying initially, I'm reading this straight out of Florida, the FloridaRealtors.org, which you can find. That this task force, which they've called Reset, well, that's great, and they have their reset. I think that us as agents, us as professionals, whether it's a plumber, whether it's electrician, whether it's a financial professional, whatever industry that is, this is restart. This is reset on defining what's important, on defining what our new plan is, whatever that business plan you had coming from 19 to 2020. I was just talking to a group earlier this week about it, about what we're in for. We've even seen, just so we're going to see thousands of loans get denied. Jeff.
Right.
This month alone, thousands of loans will be denied because of unemployment.
That 2 months ago would have been approved in a heartbeat.
Right. Yeah. So this is, and I was talking to a group, and they were just kind of like looking at me with their eyes. They're like, yeah, that's not happening. I'm like, yeah, it's happening. mean, this is reality. Not that this is a scared position. And clearly that last statement is the biggest concern, as a secondary thread that we had talked about out of COVID. And, listen, we just have to be conscious of what could possibly come up. No, but personally, I don't like getting caught with my pants on. I like knowing, well, hey, these are the possibilities, and we navigate around knowing what could possibly come up. And then that's where a good decision's made, in my opinion.
Sure. And I want to cycle back to something that you had said that I thought was really pretty meaningful, that I kind of want those of people who are watching or listening, is something that I've always had an argument with people about, is that a home is not an investment. A home is a lifestyle. Okay. It's where you want to raise your kids. It's where you want to live. It's where you pick for schools and things like that, the neighborhood. While it is theoretically, it is an increasing value asset.
Right.
It's not something you should consider as an investment. It's something you should consider as a lifestyle. And so I thought something that you said that was really fascinating was like, hey, you may find a great deal, but it may not be the right house.
Right.
Because you still have to live there. It's not a bit of stock that you get to put in the corner and saying, if it goes up, fantastic, great, I can make money on it. It's actually part of your life that you're living every single day. So if there's a John Mulaney bit, he's a comedian who has a bit when he was looking for a house with his wife about, now the house, it doesn't have a bathroom, which I know was on your list.
Right.
But I think I can get them to budge.
Well, and I look at, and especially here on the east side, I know you live out in Parkland, and, Parkland's known to have a, much larger home, usually, double the size than what you would get maybe on the east side, maybe on the water. And you and I are a perfect example of that. And I always like to look at it, in my hands, because obviously, we're here making decisions for others and helping others. And we have to decide and define our decision-making skills for ourselves before we start and help others make decisions, right? And, you and I are a perfect example of that. You were in Parkland, you probably wanted a bigger family room and a bigger area to play in. And that made you happy, where we found a different happiness. We were willing to have a smaller family room and a smaller living room. But we wanted to be on the water because that was like our life.
And by the way, my wife wanted these things. I get to make money for the family. When there's a decision that there's ready to be made, my wife will let me know that I'm supposed to make it. Until that point, I just say yes, dear. So but
but listen, trust you me, when I sit down on the couch at night, I wonder, God, I really enjoy a separate family room, compared to we have like an open space at our house. Right. So, for the love of God, I'd totally be into having, we would want to have a bigger house, but we made decisions. It goes back to our lifestyle. If we had the best deal in Parkland, that didn't meet our criteria. You
wanted to be on the water. That was more, but even go a step further, even looking at Parkland, there's two sides of Parkland. There's the east side of Parkland, there's the west side of Parkland. The east side of Parkland, really large homes, really large lots, but they're not in gated communities, or most of them. Many of them are not in gated communities. There's a handful like Cypress Head and stuff that are, but for the most part, a lot of non-gated communities. Then when you go further west, well, you're in the gated communities. Well, as soon as you get the gated communities, you get the beautiful clubhouses, you get the amazing resort style pools, you get all that stuff.
Yeah.
You don't get any land comparatively.
Yeah. So, and it comes into play too. Like I have, I have buyers that will come in and say, hey, listen, Jonathan, I can only be in a gated community because of the work I'm in, whether they're judges or attorneys out there.
We lost you a second. So whether you're judges or attorneys,
whether they're a judge or attorney, and they want to make sure that they have security there. Whether there's, ex-wife, ex-husband involved with kids, or maybe that just makes them feel secure about being in that gated area. But then there's some that are like, hey, listen, I can't have my friends sitting at the gate. So it's all decision making.
And there are trade-offs.
And then once that person that got the gate, realized that, hey, you know what? I just don't like this whole just put my friends at their house, let them go through. Then that next decision for them, we're talking about decision making. That's all here is. I need to find a house that's as big as what I had with a bigger lot with no gate.
and it changes mentality. So it's kind of funny, and I'll share a quick story, and then we lost your video again there. So I'll share a very quick story. Our last home we had, we were in Plantation, we had the pool, and I said, I don't want the aggravation of pool. As long as we've got a pool in the community, we're good. Totally, it's fine. That's what I want. I don't want the cost. I don't want the maintenance. I don't want the upkeep. I don't want any of it. Just no. And my wife was like, she didn't love the idea, but she accepted. It was one of the few times I got to kind of get my way. And right now, with COVID going on, oh man, do I regret that decision?
Because you guys could have a pool.
Yeah, I wish I had made a different decision. Obviously, I didn't predict the pandemic when we bought the home, but
right.
You understand what I'm saying. So, but it checked the boxes, and it kind of it's how our lives sort of evolve. All right, so
that's funny. Real quick before you run forward is that's going to be that in itself. Look at that nuance. I told you about what the Northeast is going to be thinking. I told you about what a lot of the condo owners were noticing or considering single family. Think about single family that doesn't have a pool and they're just not really overly excited about the house they're in that didn't have a pool. That's a whole another sector of movement in the market based upon the pandemic.
Without question. I mean, there's no question in my mind that if we are to move at some point, I would be very surprised if we don't move into a home that has a pool. Simply because of what we're experiencing now. I now have history supporting differences in decision making. So it's kind of fascinating how we kind of evolve our wants and our needs. And I don't see it as an investment, but rather as a lifestyle. Right. It's just like, hey, that's the cost of doing business in order to get what I want for the long term kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and I hadn't really considered the condo side of things, how people who live in condos would be concerned because they can't even venture out of their whatever they're even if they're an enormous condo, they can't even venture out because they're concerned of going into the hallways.
Right.
So it really does change mentalities.
Hallways,
all of it. Sure. And so the people who are in some of the gorgeous, kind of high rises out east, like River House and those sorts of places, maybe they're thinking, hey, like, this is what I wanted before. I'm not so much anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. And here's another nuance, if you think about it too, because like my wife and I, and we go back to our decision making, right? And that's all we can really think about, and based upon the experience we've had with other buyers and sellers over the years. But then, she had mentioned the other day, she's like, Jonathan, I would love to be, after everything's said and done, in a luxury condo ahead of us, long term, right? So we didn't have to do the maintenance, the lawn and the landscapers and the pool guy. And, it's endless, right? And then I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? That's a challenge in itself because we're going to be older. And you look at most people that typically go into condos, they feel the same way she does. They don't want to do the maintenance. They don't want to have to handle all these different things. But now they're in the worst of situations because the last thing they could get, or the last thing they need to get, is a virus like COVID.
Sure.
Because now, you and I would probably be able to navigate through COVID, but this is truly life-threatening for somebody as we continue to get a little older here.
The 65 and up are the most at risk, and so that it definitely, your job is going to evolve, obviously, very, very substantially. And we'll talk. I have a couple other questions on a different front.
Oh yeah.
But your job is definitely going to change as you're getting people to think about these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
as they're
Yeah,
making decision making, saying, hey, it's, as a consultant, really, because you take a consulting approach when you're working with clients,
right,
certainly buyers, you're walking with them going, hey, you have to have your list, but I'm going to put some bugs in your ear that you need to be considering
right.
just
Well,
so,
and
just so you can make an informed decision.
and for me, how we look at it too, Jeff, we always just like to disclose, lay out everything, support. I mean, the last thing we would ever want to see is somebody getting into a home where they're like, wow, you know what? I wish we had a thought about that. That's just never a comfortable situation to be in. We have a history of guiding and supporting and advising and best of scenarios. But, this is why we're here today, is that we are in unprecedented times.
Yeah,
And
I don't
you
think
and
anyone's
I,
gonna no one's
yeah,
gonna bust your chops for
of course.
not predicting COVID, Jonathan.
And think about this, Jeff. Look what we just uncovered, And listen, some people are like, hey, let's, Jeff, Jonathan, great. We already knew that condos are having a problem, with bringing guests in, but not everybody knows, Not everybody would think that, hey, listen, there's going to be a group of people a group of homeowners that are not going to be in a home without a pool again, there's going to be, we didn't realize that there is probably going to be an influx of Northeast coming down here because they watched us in the middle of the pandemic continue to have paradise weather.
Sure. And what's fascinating is my neighbors across the street, they are snowbirds, and they're disappointed because it's so hot now. They're a little bit older,
Yeah.
and it's getting warmer, so they're ready to go back to New York, but there's no ability for them to go back to New York right now. So it's
Right.
it's the other side of it. So it's
See,
kind of
yeah, there you go. There's another one. Yeah.
all right. So let's talk about something that you mentioned, that you had people that were willing to do virtual showings and making decisions using a virtual showing.
Mhm.
What are you predicting the future? I know that virtual tours are becoming the norm, or very common anyway. Whether they're the norm, they're becoming more common in your industry. Obviously, photography has always been king, and the better and the best agents like yourself have always kind of excelled at creating those experiences for people that before they walk in, they already have a positive feeling about what's going on.
Right.
What are you predicting, either from people's buying actions in the short term or in the long term, as it pertains to virtual tours and photography?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to see the purchasing of property with sight unseen scenarios increase. So you can definitely bet on that. That was probably one of the four major topics once Corona hit, and we realized that, hey, we were going to be shut down for a while on what we were going to see post Corona. You can definitely believe that. I would definitely suggest entertaining. With the virtual tours, they're going to continue to get more and more techy, more and more. I think this whole Matterport is going to evolve. We're just going a little more technical on photography and the different, whether it's the drone, whether it's the aerial pics, whether it's your standard general pics, and what kind of packages these different photographers provide to the realtors. I think Matterport has turned out to be a key factor in purchasing property sight unseen, because it's able to give you the dimensions and the layout, and how that Matterport program and photography is geared. It's definitely situated perfect for buying sight unseen. So definitely we'll see an increase there in sight unseen purchasing.
Now, do you predict, and given your current clients or whatever, are you predicting that people will basically have decisions made before they get that final walkthrough before they officially say, yes, I'm buying this? Like, are you predicting, like, I could see contracts changing, going, I'm making an offer on this property pending me walking physically through it, and it's exactly what I expected it, kind of thing. So,
we just had that, Jeff. We just had that yesterday. I have a Pompano listing on the water, And as a matter of fact, they showed it at 1 o'clock today. They sent an offer in. They haven't seen the property. The buyers are out of town. They're sending their agent in. They put a 3-day inspection period on it with and the contract's already negotiated out. My seller did not want to sign the offer until the agent gave us the go that they were going to proceed. So I've probably got a queued call in place right now, waiting
I
to
appreciate you
respond.
waiting. We'll be done pretty soon. So we're good.
Yeah, some of my buddies were like, ABC, JK, ABC. But yeah, so once we, so that's, an immediate scenario and a response to what you're saying is, yeah, that's happening and we're seeing where the agents are being vetted enough by the buyers to trust, and there's enough good photography because, back in the day, nobody would ever buy a sight unseen property, nor do I overly recommend it. I always suggest to get your eyes on it if at all possible. But if you have somebody that you can truly trust and you have a liaison in place, a good agent that you feel comfortable, and you're able to cover all corners of the home, inside, out, exterior, interior, and within all the homework, and you can get all the paperwork. And here's a good factor, is if you can get the past survey, if you can get the past appraisal, these are documents that would really help you define making that decision that I don't see out there happening as much. They're just kind of starting from scratch. Well, that home wasn't, typically the homes aren't built from scratch unless they're buying something in new construction. Even with new construction, there's more homework done on a new construction home than any home out there because it's so immediate. It just happened. So,
Right.
So yeah, there's documentation from the past that you can get as a sight unseen buyer. And this is a great conversation that we're laying out there. I guarantee you, sorry about that. You got another call in. I guarantee you this content and the things that we're talking about are not exposed out there to the general public, Jeff.
Right. And I see this evolving even more when the new normal, whatever it looks like, because I think that we're going to see a much more virtual world. Our world was already sort of moving in this direction. This was, I think, the catalyst that will spark it. Businesses are already talking about more remote employees, reducing overhead, that sort of stuff, which I'm sure the commercial real estate agents out there are not thrilled by, but neither here nor there. But right. I think you're going to find that is going to be more and more reality. I think, I can see, like, I personally would not buy a home without physically seeing it. Now I can make lots and lots and lots of choices to where I've just about made my final decision, but it's sort of like, I want to touch it, feel it, taste it, smell it kind of mentality. It's sort of like, a lot of people are still uncomfortable buying clothing online, even though you can return it very quickly. Well, home, it's a little harder to just return the home, right?
It's funny. I'll tell you, just to tie into that, I have a home over in Lighthouse Point, a listing in Lighthouse Point, where we have an active buyer on it. There is a primary resident in there, and they can't show it. They're not comfortable for more than just standard reasons. And then we have a buyer that's interested. Once the way the game is played with New York coming to Fort Lauderdale, this New York buyer that's interested in this Lighthouse Point property that we have, they have to quarantine for 14 days before they can make any move. Well, the sellers know that the buyer's coming from New York, and they're not going to allow this family to come in and purchase the house at this point. It's not happening. They're not going to be able to see it until they've defined their 14-day quarantine. And even if they come across the border, I don't know if you're aware of this, even coming across the border they're being patrolled, where they want to know where you came, obviously what city you were out of, what kind of measures did you take while you were there at your from where you were coming from, and then where you're going, right? And then how long you're going to be, quarantining, because they don't know, the patrols don't know, but they want to define that you're coming into our state and you're not going to be in a position to be a spreader without some really intense information being dealt.
Sure. And what I guess historically being an out-of-state buyer was always difficult, but you could always just fly down, take a look at it, be comfortable, fly out
Right.
there later that night. That's not an option anymore.
Right.
So, I understand the buyer's concern. I mean, they don't know this person and they can't have somebody come in, then they don't have a place to live for 3 days while
Yeah.
they allow it. And then, if I'm a buyer and it's call it $1 million property, call it $100,000 property. It's still a lot
Yeah.
of money. Regardless of the cost, it's still a significant expenditure of money. They're like going, well, I need to physically see it before I'm willing to give you the money. So it really
Right.
becomes this sort of chicken and egg kind of situation that there's not a great answer for. I mean, the lawyers, having spoken to a number of attorneys, have kind of solved like signatory issues with like drive-by closings. I know that I'm sure you've experienced some of that where you'll
Yeah.
have buyers or sellers that they'll physically stay in their car, be handed a clipboard, everyone's wearing masks, everyone's wearing gloves, they hand out, they sign, everyone puts,
Yeah.
Purells up pretty well, and 15, 20 minutes later you're done, right? And it's a relatively safe situation comparatively. It's not substantially different than getting takeout
Yeah.
from a restaurant. As long as you're smart and you use sensible precautions, you're okay. You got quite the quagmire there with regard to that buyer and seller situation, because you have two people that both want the same thing.
Yeah.
But they can't find that middle ground because of the circumstances that they find themselves in. And it's really interesting because if I were that seller, I mean, my wife has asthma. So while I'm not in the classic, from an age perspective, an at-risk category, well, she does have asthma, which is an at-risk category. So you don't want to take those risks. So we've been really social distancing from kind of get-go.
Can you imagine if you were trying to sell your home?
I don't know what we would do. Like, I guess the answer is that we would probably, if we were very serious and we had to sell, and there was timetables attached,
You had to move out.
we would move out and we would move in with family or whatever we would do for that period of time to say, hey, you have 1 week to show as many people, then I'm moving back in after 3 days. So I've got a 10-day window that I can't be in this home because it's really, can live on the, and they're what I would say is for that completely offline, well, I can talk to you about it offline if you'd like, but there are products out there that are like foggers or misters that are sanitizers.
Okay. Yeah, and we're seeing that. We're seeing GCs are starting to do that where, for a fee, $350, $400, they'll come in and they'll sanitize the entire property. And we might end up having to go there. I actually have on our team, we actually have a general contractor who has, mentioned, hey, if we get into a scenario where, buyer and seller are both comfortable with this, we'll go in and do a full-blown desanitation or sanitizing, de-COVID the property. But, that opens up a whole can of worms in itself with chemicals.
Sure. Although at some point you take you go what you got to go. But I would say is for that, I could see it being like, hey, if you're a serious buyer, you're willing to pay the $500 for the cleaning, which then gets credited back at the end when you complete the sale. And that's just a $5, $100 cost that the seller has if they sell the home. If not, it's
I have to tell you, I got to tell you, Jeff, just being, a little facetious here, which is, kind of my style. I'm a little character. We all know that.
We know. Yeah.
I've had sellers that literally, if you were not using vinegar and water, with a 50-50 dilution, you were not allowed to have, a candle, a, Clorox and Febreze and Renews It and all these other chemicals were absolutely banned from the house because the seller had allergies geared towards chemical products.
Right.
And lo and behold, something like that, would come up when we went in and paid for a defogger of a property for sanitization,
I got nothing for you there. At least I guess I would say I'm glad I build websites and do marketing for a living. At some point I'll be like, I'll let you guys deal with those little issues.
That's a segue to me. What are you doing, by the way? What's your game for the future? How are you feeling based upon the customers that have called, the traffic you got? Are people reducing their marketing plans? Are they increasing their marketing plans? What's the layout for that in the future? Because in my opinion, you're at that top tier, Jeff, for marketing in general.
Thank you.
Everybody knows that when it comes to video, when it comes to websites, when it comes to lead generation, when it comes to the overall media game, you're there at the top. What's the incoming calls like?
So fortunately, the conversations that I'm having are, we're either staying where we're at or we're increasing. Okay. Knock on wood, none of our clients are pulling back. And the reason behind that is, I believe, with every ounce of my being, and this goes for Flying Chimp, because I've even increased for Flying Chimp the amount of marketing that we're doing. And the reason is because this is a buying opportunity.
Yeah.
And we talked about this the other day. It's a buying opportunity. There are businesses that are going to struggle. There are businesses that are pulling back. There are businesses that are struggling, okay, that are by definition pulling back their marketing efforts.
Right, and may not be back.
And may not be back. So in my opinion, this is an opportunity to go out and get market share. Okay. Yeah. So while the market may not increase today for you, okay, the market share may not increase as of right now, it does increase mind share, which can then ultimately increase market share later. So, right. For example, McDonald's is the largest advertiser on the planet. Okay, nobody buys more advertising than McDonald's as of the last numbers that I saw.
Right.
And everybody knows McDonald's. So why do they keep advertising?
Right.
Because they want to stay on the top of the minds of everybody all the time, no matter what. Because as soon as they stop advertising, that's when you stop thinking about them, and you stop thinking about getting your Big Mac fixed, right? So it doesn't matter. So the idea behind any of this stuff is to increase your visibility at a time when other people are pulling back.
Yeah.
Now is the time. If home prices are going to drop, now is the time to put money into investments. If the stock market was at 29, it dropped down to 19, now it's floating around 23, 24. Some people are a little concerned that it may kind of dip down a little bit. So you got dry powder there. But my point is you don't buy at 29 and sell at 19 because you get scared. You buy you buy at 19 and 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, because you know it's going to go back up.
Right.
Business is going to get back to normal. My question is are you going to be the business that gets back to normal? And so for what I'm consulting with my clients on is what are we doing? So the biggest thing that in my opinion businesses need to be doing in addition to marketing though is making sure that their message is on point to what people need to hear today.
Yeah.
Is if all you're doing right now is talking about, are you ready? You want to buy a new home? Call Team JK. It would come up very tone deaf. Okay. Yeah. Whereas saying, hey, you have questions, people are concerned, let me be a resource to you on the question that you have. It's a different sort of mentality. And I know that you've always been a kind of a consultative approach anyway, so that's not necessarily applicable to you, but even like what you were saying about like, hey, like we need to this is business, but we shouldn't lose sight of what's going on really on the global, on a macro perspective regarding health.
Yeah, I think some people forget, we live here, I mean, I have friends of mine that are firefighters. I have friends of mine that are nurses. We care for them. Are you kidding me? I think that, and there's got to be some sort of, tie to, who is covering and taking care of us. We have friends that are doctors. We have friends that are, that own, large practices and small practices. And, they're out there in the field right now.
A client of mine is a pulmonologist 2 doors down from me in my community. We're not close with this family, but he's a pulmonologist. Okay. Yeah. This is,
he's a neighbor.
And this is 2 doors down, like literally my next door neighbor's next, like the other side of my next door neighbor kind of thing. And ultimately this is a respiratory illness. That's what they do. Like, I mean, like they're on the front lines. And so I think it's good. And obviously we know one another through Rotary. And for those of you who are listening, who are unfamiliar with Rotary is it's a service organization. We're all
Yeah,
about,
and Jeff
you know,
was in a different club. You
we're
were
at different clubs
yeah, downtown. Yeah.
and so, but it's a service organization, giving back and doing good in your community. And so that's kind of how we met one another, is through doing good in the world kind of thing. So that's kind of, so I know that's kind of part of your DNA as it is mine. But I think the thing about the messaging is when I've seen people just straight up selling their wares, their goods, their services, that's when it starts to kind of get that icky feeling to me.
Yeah.
And so what one of the things that I've worked with our clients on is making sure that what you're putting out there is going to be well received.
Yeah.
Because
No.
oftentimes, like and it's interesting. So on my Facebook feed, this is maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks ago or so, when this is still in its infancy but starts to feel a little bit real.
Right.
One of my friends on Facebook posted a meme that said, "Hey, don't get upset about businesses, about a local restaurant or whatever, talking about buying their food or buying their whatever, because they're just trying to pay their mortgage." And there was a lot of truth to that. And you and I are small business owners, so we get that. But I did push back and I was saying, yeah, I agree with that. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to change how you're selling it and how you're positioning it. No different than right now, what we're doing here today. I'm not selling, you're not selling, you're just providing information. I said, hey, I'm doing these interview series. Why don't you jump on? We'll do a quick conversation and get some information out there.
And look what came out. Yeah.
And we had some cool stuff. And so 50, 100, 200 people watch it, listen to it. We're actually converting all the stuff over to podcasts as well, so people can listen to their cars. But you're just providing information. You're not saying, hey, buy a home today. What's wrong with you? You're not doing that. So to me, there's ways of providing value at a time that when you're trying to create that mind share in different ways. And so I think that's kind of
in agreement with that. And it's funny you say that. You look at like a different sector of business, non-real estate, non-media, non-front lines, right? Let's go down the road of restaurants. What if they didn't redefine their takeout process and all of them closed down, and then none of us were geared towards eating? I mean, I know, that it just wouldn't make any sense at all that people haven't gone out and gotten takeout. That would be crazy, because you have to support these people. They're not going to be around.
And you've seen my Pass the Hat campaign, talking about supporting these local businesses that have been hurt really badly. I mean, there's a lot of industries. The hospitality obviously is one that has gotten hit really hard, that these, ignoring even the business owners, they have employees, they have staff. If we don't go out and try to help these people. So I love hearing stories of, talk about the Pass the Hat. In fact, I just did a video about this, to where people are a financial advisor I know bought 10 pizzas and a couple of platters and just sent it to the local ER, emergency room. It's kind of just to thank, which, how amazing is that? He's thanking people who are on the front lines, putting their families at risk, putting themselves at risk, their families at risk, and he's helping a local business. I know somebody else bought 20 dozen bagels, and gave out a dozen bagels to all their neighbors, just left them on their doorstep on a Sunday morning, just to say we're in this together. It's pretty cool stuff. What people are doing.
Did you see Hot Legs actually had monies? I go to Hot Legs every once in a while. It's over on Commercial Boulevard, just east of Federal there. And they had like $10,000 stapled all around. So,
I heard about that.
Took all the money.
Awesome. And he took it all down and gave it to his employees. I mean, that's, how do you not want to go out and help them?
The Lunchroom, who's owned by Elliot Wolf. Elliot Wolf owns Top Hat, Coconuts, Foxy Brown's, lunchroom, and I think he's got a north and south lunchroom. He took his lunchroom, and on 2 days a week, he's feeding the south location off of 17th is feeding Memorial, Broward Memorial, and then or Broward Health, and then the north location's feeding Holy Cross. I think they're putting out like 300 meals a week.
That's amazing. And another group, a restaurant group up in the Boca area, where I kind of know the owner a little bit, not very well, kind of some mutual friends. They're providing free food to displaced hospitality workers. So
Wow.
since they're like, we have the staff, we've got food that we can't sell right now. Let's just give it to
Right. Wow.
to the wait staff who got laid off in other locations. And it was and I love seeing the community banding together. And so this is why I love the idea of passing the hat. Knock on wood, my business has not been as affected. And that's why I kind of want to remind people to do that stuff.
Wow. I mean, just the amount of information and content going out. One of my neighbors owns Chimney House just next to the Broward Performing Arts. And, he's takeout only. That's not what he was prepared for. He never planned for this, nor did we ever see this coming. And, we're doing everything we can to support him as well. He's got great food over there as well. So I did, plug him. But Best Barbecue, Luke Borman and his family over there on 441, just on the outskirts of Plantation there. These different restaurants, we personally know the owners, and we definitely want to make sure that they're in our hearts and prayers as well as being there after post-corona.
So what I'm going to tell you is don't make it hearts and prayers. I'm saying what my suggestion to you is, Jonathan, use social media. One of the people I know did when they kind of heard about the idea past the hat is they said, hey, I'm going to send out an email to my entire network. And he was supporting a Thai restaurant where he knows the family. Okay. And I'm going to, you get a free roll of spring rolls on me. It's like a $5 or $7 item.
I love spring rolls.
Okay. So I'll send you the information. And you mentioned this guy's name. Okay. It's Lee Burke, who's a commercial, commercial and residential insurance agent. He's like, you mentioned my name and I will, I'll pay, the spring rolls are on me. Now, I don't know if I just threw him on the bus for spending a bunch of money, but
yeah, that's funny.
But I love hearing that stuff.
Yeah, and I mentioned that to Frank over at the Chimney House. I think he's got like a 15% off bill. It'll cover, delivery or whatever. And Elliot's main focus is not as much monies or something for free, but it's more of he has a site where you can actually purchase or put monies in that goes directly towards serving those two hospitals.
And I love that. And I love hearing in a few of the other restaurants, and we'll kind of wrap up on this because I think we're getting a little long because I think people are getting a little bored by our conversation.
There's a lot to talk about. I mean, God, we can't help.
One thing I love, and this is a great pivot, was a local restaurant. I don't know the owner, so I'm not going to bother giving them a pitch yet, but I think it's really cool what they're doing is they're selling grocery items. So since they have the raw chicken, they have the raw,
I know California Pizza Kitchen's doing it.
But they also have the access to other sundries that maybe are a little like toilet paper because they're buying it through. And so I love hearing, the ingenuity behind providing a service, providing value, and, helping to keep the lights on.
Right. So, changing the game. They got to change.
Love the pivot.
You have to change.
Love the pivot.
Reset, restart.
Sounds good. Jonathan, I really enjoy this. Thank you so much for joining me today. So give us 30 seconds, a 30-second pitch about Team JK.
Well, I got to tell you, with Team JK, we're resetting and restarting. We've got a 30, 60, and 90-day plan that doesn't really reflect what the plan was back from 19 going into 2020. So, what right now we have pretty much honed in. We've cleaned up all of our listing inventory to make sure that everything is geared so you're able to catch those properties online at Team JK at teamjkcompass.com. So again, that my website is teamjkcompass.com. And so that's our main key. We'll continue to take inventory as people get pivoted into having to make decisions, whether they were good or bad, and we'll support them through the process. We have that historical experience in being able to help families in the worst of situations appropriately and smoothly get out of a bad situation.
Love it. Jonathan, appreciate your time. To everybody listening, this is Jonathan Keith of Team JK. I will include his information in the description below. In the meantime, be safe, be well. Everybody pass the hat.
You rock,
We'll
Jeff.
see you
You're
again.
pro. You rock, Jeff. Appreciate it, buddy.